Good morning, day 23, rise and shine. And I got to show you today, wow, looks more like a sunset than a sunrise. Let me get from behind that park board there. Wow. I took some pictures. It was even more fantastic a few minutes ago. Whoa. That's the thing with the sunrise and the sunset, like it's moment to moment sometimes on how it can change, especially when it's a real colorful like one like that, I guess all the chemistry or maybe it's physics of light interacting. I wasn't the best science student. I really tried. I like science, but I'm not remembering all the right terms right now. Probably whatever happens with and what part of science that belongs to. Anywho, let's get on with what. I was like, oh, what do I, asking God, what do you want me to talk about today? Like, I don't know. And then it came to me, whoops. There I am, sorry about that. The Father's love. And continuing on with the story from yesterday that I shared in the Bible, the daughters of Zelophehad. I had to look up how to pronounce that right. Zelophehad. And it was Milcah, Hoglah, Tirzah, Noah, and Milcah. I think I remembered them all. I think I got them all right. But anyway, their names are in the Bible. Sorry, I think I got a dog hair on my mouth. Ugh. Yeah. Can't go anywhere in our house without, gosh, look at that. I wanted to walk with that behind me today. I was like, whoa, it's pretty cool. But if we really think about, and we've been talking off and on about legacy and having that long-term view, seeing the possibilities, well, I wonder if Zelophehad, the dad, must have had some of those thoughts too, and really poured into his daughters, which in an unusual for the time way. Women were not. I think women were definitely valued, and that's sometimes hard for us to see because they did have a lot of physical limitations that we modern women don't have now through, dealing with our monthly cycles and all kinds of different things that women back then really were physically limited in a way that men weren't. And so the roles were more clear and defined. And of course the roles that they played in their society at the time. Sometimes we forget some practicalities like that. But anywho, it must have been quite the dad who really poured into his daughters at that time and really was able to instill in them a sense of worth, and to give them that courage to go stake their claim, even though it was not in line with the current laws at the time, and to even go and petition and either ask for an exception, or what really happened was that the laws changed. Wow, that must have been quite a relationship that he had with his daughters, and a way that he was, loved them in such a way to pour into them, and maybe even go against, maybe going against is not the right word, but to look at them in a new way that maybe was countercultural at that time. And what that did to change. And that's what our Heavenly Father can do. He, it doesn't always make sense to people around us, to common culture today. we often get looked at like we're kind of weird, nuts, like how can you believe that? Like, but when you get poured into that way, and when you're connected, it gives you an unusual kind of courage and an unusual confidence. And I now personally, going a little bit deeper into my faith and really trying to let go of what people think and rely on what he thinks, is a whole, I'm like a baby, like with wobbly legs learning to walk here, because my approach to the Bible up until now, and even my faith, has sort of been to just only rely on other people's, their direct, what they've learned, and learn secondhand versus directly the way that I'm doing now, and reading the word for myself, not looking up anybody else's, like, what does this mean? But really trying to get a direct, line of communication going from me to God. And so this is part of what you're getting. And so I would encourage you to do the same thing, and don't just take my interpretation for it and what he's saying to me, because that is what makes the living word living and dynamic. And so life-giving is that it will say something different to you. I keep trying to give you, the color's changing behind me. But this is, since I've been on the topic of legacy and really trying to kind of read between the lines, you really do have to go back to the dad. And there was something different about this guy. And also, he was respected among his peers. He's mentioned a few times in the book of Numbers, not just that once. So he had enough respect that when his daughters came there, and even though he was no longer living, that legacy was standing there with him. And those, Moses and all the priests and the community and God even was looking and seeing him standing behind them, like, oh, these must be women of character and worth, because they not only are saying this on their own as a united front with confidence, but their dad before them, we can rely, their dad was good. Whew, getting like some fresh revelation here. I'm going to show you some, I wish I could zoom in with this. Anyway, all the ducks that are out there. But that's sort of like, that's just so comforting to me, because even though I didn't have the perfect earthly father, he did the best he could, I did get a lot of good things from him, and it allows me to really separate out the chaff from the wheat, and not, we humans are complicated and we don't get it right. But through my Heavenly Father's perspective now, I'm able to see a little bit more of that, appreciate the good, stand on that. But ultimately, I know who I am because of whose I am, the great I am, and not, my identity does not come from my earthly self or my earthly parents. They're just a shadow of the real thing. And I think that's part of what that story is also representing. And God does that through stories of real people, but there's also metaphorical meaning behind a lot of these stories. And I'll probably shift gears tomorrow and go in a whole new direction. Something that's kind of been rambling around in my mind as I've been trying to kind of understand. Anyway, but I hope you can maybe take a little piece of what God was speaking to me through the story of Zelophehad and his daughters. And the other little nugget that they kind of threw in at the end of Numbers, almost forgot this, was there were consequences to following this as well. And the daughters had to be okay with that. Like, it wasn't just, okay, here, we're going to change the law for you. And now, because the other law at the time was that land was very important, not only for the family, but for the clan, the larger tribe and clan at large. And so it was allotted to the families within the tribe, but still the land of the tribe needed to maintain and stay intact. It wasn't fair for it to go outside of, but because land passes down first through men, you can see where I'm going here, the women now who are landowners, if they married outside of their tribe, then the land goes with them, theoretically, right? Well, it does. So they made another law and another consequence that the women, the sisters, had to abide by. They had to marry within their own clan. And they were okay with that. They abided by it and they followed the rules. So that was another consequence of this new law. Okay, ladies, you can own the land, but the land has to stay within the tribe, within the clan that it originally belongs to. It can't go outside. So if you're going to marry, you've got to marry, and most likely it was like a cousin or something. So there were consequences of that. And even metaphorically, when I take a look at that too, and my relationship with my Heavenly Father and staking my claim according to what He's told me, I can't have it always. I'm not going to please maybe everybody here on earth. People aren't going to resonate with what I'm saying. Or He's going to give me a specific assignment, and even though maybe in my earthly self, I'd like to go over here and stake that claim. And He says, no, ma'am, that's not for you. You need to stay over here in the land that I've given to you. You can't just go take any land you want, or it can't go outside of my will, outside of what I have provisioned for you. But don't we want to do it all? We're so ambitious, we people. And He made us that way, but it needs to stay within His provision, within His domain, and what He has allotted for you specifically. And we sometimes, that's the trap of comparison too, and trying to please man. Like, we look over and we're like, well, she's doing this, that's so great. I should do that. I want to go over there and do that. And we start even thinking less of ourselves. We got to know whose we are, where we belong, what lane we need to stay in, all the things. And that is then where we can really rely on our ownership of something, is also abiding by the natural consequences of it. And not just wanting to claim something and then not have consequences. Everything has consequences. And knowing that, and they were okay with that. So rely on the Father's love and His provision and His consequences, and things will be all right. Have faith, have trust. And that legacy of His love stands behind you and girds you up and supports you, backs you up, validates, all the things. Gives credibility. As I was just reading all of those things, Zelophehad's name carried and added to his daughters' credibility. They didn't rely on just their own. He must have lived quite a life